What unfolded at Team USA training camp was never a fight. It wasn't jealousy either, and it certainly didn't resemble the exaggerated headlines circulating online. Behind closed doors, something much more uneasy took place. Basketball reached its own conclusion, independent of coaches, politics, or marketing schemes. The game itself began selecting the focal point through which everything should move. Once that transition started, there was no method to pause it or smooth its edges. Public statements remained polished, calm, and strategically crafted. But the emotions inside that gym revealed an entirely different reality. This wasn't disorder. It was revelation, and revelations at the highest level can be deeply unsettling. When basketball exposes hierarchy in real time, reputations offer no shelter. Past accomplishments and expectations suddenly lose power. No player merely lost a position. They lost significance. And once that truth settled in, the environment shifted instantly. Caitlin Clark entered Team USA camp unlike most athletes before her. There was no visible effort to cautiously blend in. No slow adjustment to the established order. No quiet agreement to test limits before asserting her presence. She didn't arrive with entitlement, yet she also showed no hesitation. That difference carried weight because in elite circles, hesitation is often misread as reverence. Players are trained to believe that conformity is safer than individuality, particularly among decorated veterans. Caitlin didn't oppose that mindset. She simply functioned beyond it. She played basketball exactly as she always had, direct, fearless, and efficient. Within moments of live drills, a subtle transformation emerged. Possessions started revolving naturally around her rhythm, not due to coaching orders or teammate courtesy, but because the flow improved. The ball gained speed whenever Caitlin handled it. Spacing adjusted automatically. Reads appeared earlier than usual, and at this level, a fraction of time alters everything. Half a second can determine success or failure. Elite players survive on narrow margins, fully aware of the limits basketball permits. Caitlin eliminated those margins, not through selfish play but through clarity and decisiveness. She didn't prolong possessions, she refined them. Decisions came so rapidly that defenses couldn't reset and teammates couldn't hesitate. The offense didn't bend to her style, it sharpened around it. That's precisely when hierarchy begins to change. In professional sports, hierarchy isn't only about raw talent. It's about comfort, familiarity, and long-standing patterns. Caitlin disrupted those patterns without declaring herself. She never demanded touches or claimed leadership aloud. Instead, she allowed basketball to crown her role. And when the game chooses a leader faster than players can accept, tension forms. Not rage, just undeniable discomfort. No one could accuse her of errors. No one could claim she forced plays or disrespected tradition. Yet with every possession, the truth grew clearer. The game felt smoother with her in command, and teammates became more assured under her orchestration. The tempo rose without ever slipping into confusion. That blend is uncommon, and it unsettles elite structures because they survive on routine and predictability. Even at the highest tier, rhythm follows an invisible code. Players understand when to accelerate, when to yield, and how hierarchy is meant to function. Caitlin Clark never confronted that code head-on. She simply made it obsolete. Abruptly, dialogues faded the instant she received the ball, not through courtesy, but through pure instinct. Teammates focused harder, determined not to miss an opening. Coaches reacted physically before they realized it. That wasn't publicity. It was influence. Influence like that builds silently. Over time, repeated proof confirms that systems thrive better around one central force. No one in that gym lacked dedication. Each athlete trained intensely, completed drills, and competed fiercely. Yet dedication alone doesn't define rank. Execution does. Caitlin's flawless execution triggered an inevitable reset. Veterans accustomed to control sensed the offense glide away from them instead of toward them. It wasn't malice. It was outcome. That separation is harsh because it leaves no room for protest. There was no unfairness, no authority to accuse, no politics to criticize, only basketball revealing its choice. Caitlin didn't surpass others by taking excessive shots. She surpassed them by removing resistance and making the game simpler while steadily lifting expectations. That form of mastery doesn't resemble dominance. It resembles certainty. Once certainty appears, awareness replaces rivalry. Experienced players grasp what it means when basketball no longer favors them. They feel transition rather than failure, and transition wounds deeper than loss. By the close of initial sessions, the atmosphere wasn't aggressive. It felt weighted. Every repetition carried sharper consequence, and errors echoed louder. The margin for casual play vanished entirely. Caitlin never manufactured that strain deliberately. She produced it through precision, and precision among elites is merciless. When precision becomes the norm, anything weaker stands exposed instantly. Reactions began to divide. Some adjusted their purpose, some embraced new roles, others tightened their concentration. A few felt the ground move beneath their confidence, and that's when genuine unease forms. Not between personalities but between fact and belief. No one entered that camp expecting a sudden rearrangement. Plans never predicted basketball to orbit around a player who claimed nothing verbally. But basketball ignores planning. It rewards function. From the first moment Caitlin Clark touched the court, it was evident the game breathed easier through her. That recognition didn't erupt. It unfolded step by step until denial required more energy than acceptance. Elite camps are never disorderly environments. They are disciplined, calculated, and orderly in ways outsiders rarely detect. Reputations regulate conduct and keep systems intact. Team USA camps are designed exactly that way. Competitive yet composed. Everyone rotates through drills and touches while quietly respecting hierarchy. That balance didn't endure Caitlin Clark's presence because she clarified everything too soon. Ambiguity guards egos in elite spaces. Fluid roles allow everyone to feel valuable and hopeful. Caitlin narrowed that comfort zone by exposing readiness and timing. As pace climbed, tolerance fell, and small delays became glaring. This wasn't a question of desire. It was preparedness. Basketball shifted faster than expectations could adjust, and once that shift occurred, the entire camp felt permanently transformed. Readiness is a quality elite players take pride in, and realizing that someone is processing the game at a faster level can feel unsettling. That feeling isn't offensive, but it demands honest comparison, and comparisons in elite basketball are harsh. When Caitlin Clark directed the offense, possessions appeared smoother and more decisive. The ball kept moving, and choices came early enough to punish defensive lapses. The court even felt broader, though nothing physical had shifted. That sensation only makes sense to those who have lived it. It feels as if basketball has quickened, yet only for certain players. For the one controlling it, everything remains composed. For the rest, it feels intense and urgent. That urgency changed the tone inside the camp. Drills carried deeper meaning, and mistakes lingered longer than usual. Players locked in sooner because there was no space left for casual effort. No instructions forced that reaction. The environment itself required it. Elite gyms are built to celebrate excellence while quietly preserving established status. That preservation isn't personal. It's systematic and necessary for stability. Systems need consistency. Chemistry requires continuity, and constant disruption destroys trust. Caitlin never disturbed that order by being loud or confrontational. She unsettled it by being undeniable. Once it became clear the offense worked better through her, the gym faced an uncomfortable decision. Do you slow her momentum to maintain balance, or allow basketball to keep rewarding efficiency? That dilemma was never spoken openly, yet everyone sensed it. Ignoring efficiency begins to resemble denial, and denial among elites is fragile. Elite players accept competition, but they struggle to accept quiet irrelevance. Irrelevance doesn't bench you or shame you. It simply reroutes the flow. The ball stops reaching you as often, and pace passes by instead of involving you. You're present and committed, but no longer vital. That awareness is brutal, and it explains why instant clarity feels threatening even without conflict. No arguments erupted, no disrespect occurred, and no one was excluded deliberately. Yet the camp felt heavier because ambiguity had vanished. Ambiguity is comfort, and once comfort disappears, adaptation becomes essential. Some athletes respond by sharpening their roles and discovering new impact. Others feel as if they have lost identity because identity in elite sports often depends on central importance. Caitlin never caused introspection purposely. She triggered it through consistent precision. Each session confirmed the same reality. This wasn't randomness or novelty, but structure revealing preference. Once preference becomes obvious, pretending otherwise becomes exhausting. The camp never felt hostile. It felt quiet and heavy in the way rooms grow silent when truth is known but not yet admitted. Admitting it makes it real, and real forces permanent change. Elite environments fear clarity because clarity requires decisions. Players either adjust to the new rhythm or confront the possibility they may no longer fit as they once did. Fans only witness highlights and statistics, never the mental weight inside shifting systems. Caitlin Clark didn't merely play well at Team USA camp. She accelerated undeniable truth. When truth outruns expectation, everything changes. Some players rise to meet it, others feel exposed by it, and that difference shaped what followed. Paige Bueckers didn't require meetings or reassurance. She recognized the shift instantly. And instant recognition is what elite basketball intelligence proves in real time. While others were still struggling to adjust to the tempo, Paige Bueckers was already redefining her role, not resisting it or surrendering it, but intelligently reshaping it. That difference matters more than anything because elite basketball only allows two effective reactions. You either battle against the shift or you move in harmony with it. Paige chose harmony, not withdrawal, not fear, just smart alignment. Alignment is never about ego or insecurity. It's about awareness and synchronization. Paige has always been a high-level processor. She understands spacing before it becomes visible and senses timing beyond what statistics display. Her game has never relied on forcing volume or demanding authority. So, when Caitlin Clark began accelerating the environment, Paige never viewed it as a threat. She viewed it as revelation. The pace felt natural, and the reads felt familiar. Basketball flowed exactly the way she believed it should when played at its cleanest form. That understanding allowed the two to blend seamlessly. When Caitlin controlled possessions, Paige never vanished from influence. Instead, she sharpened her purpose. She spaced the floor precisely, cut deliberately, and timed movements so the ball arrived perfectly on cue. That chemistry never develops from friendship or planning. It emerges from shared intelligence and processing speed. Paige never required basketball to slow down for her because she was already prepared. That's why her presence carried such meaning inside that gym. Elite players often search for validation during disruption, hoping the system reassures their importance. Paige never waited for reassurance. She adjusted instantly. She grasped something many players struggle to accept. Clearer basketball is never insulting. It's inviting. It's an invitation to function cleaner, faster, and smarter. Paige embraced that invitation without hesitation. Her reaction revealed a deeper truth about elite competition. Great players never fight basketball, they understand it. They don't impose identity on systems. They allow identity to surface through efficiency. Efficiency is always silent and calm, yet impossible to dismiss when properly observed. Coaches noticed because when Paige and Caitlin shared the floor, possessions didn't only gain speed, they gained meaning. Spacing tightened, reads aligned, and decisions arrived on time. The offense never looked rushed or forced. It looked certain. That certainty is the greatest compliment basketball can offer. Paige's reaction mattered deeply because it became proof that adaptation wasn't merely possible. It was productive and empowering. Her response dismissed the idea that Caitlin Clark's arrival made success more difficult for others. Instead, it showed that for players with elite readiness, the environment became sharper and more honest. Honesty only becomes brutal when players are unprepared. Paige wasn't unprepared. She recognized the hierarchy wasn't being unfairly dismantled. It was being clarified in real time, and clarification reveals talent rather than erasing it. That's why her demeanor never changed. No visible frustration, no defensive language, and no resistance surfaced. Paige never saw Caitlin as competition alone. She saw her as structure, and great players build with structure rather than resisting it. This is what separates elite adaptability from survival. Survival reacts to pressure, while adaptability anticipates it. Paige never allowed her role to fade before wisely redefining it. Paige Bueckers instantly embraced a refined version of herself that aligned perfectly with the evolving reality inside the gym. That immediate transition explained why her presence felt steady even while tension quietly increased around her. Where others sensed instability, Paige felt the floor strengthen beneath her confidence. She has always thrived when basketball operates at its purest and most decisive form. That wasn't chance, it was structure. Structure leaves no room for excuses, and her response became the silent measure everyone else was judged against. Once one elite player demonstrates successful adaptation, resistance becomes harder to defend and easier to expose. Paige never chased publicity or exaggerated praise. She didn't need to. Her influence appeared naturally through efficiency and awareness. The environment wasn't unfair. It was simply demanding. That demand separated the gym in subtle but unmistakable ways. Not between celebrated stars and overlooked players, but between those who could live comfortably inside clarity and those who required ambiguity to feel important. That split had nothing to do with ability. It had everything to do with acceptance. Basketball continued rewarding synchronization over isolation and execution over emotion. Elite athletes often dread a specific realization. It's not being benched, missing shots, or feeling outmatched. It's sensing the game no longer relies on you the way it once did. That awareness never arrives loudly. It arrives silently, rep by rep. You're still present and involved, yet the ball stops finding you instinctively because basketball has discovered a smoother route. That's precisely what unsettles the strongest competitors. At Team USA camp, no one was disrespected or demoted. Each athlete earned the right to be there. But the instant Caitlin Clark became the center of gravity, possessions behaved differently. The game never paused to reset around physical assertion. Instead, it accelerated around precision, timing, and faster decisions. That acceleration rewarded mental readiness and exposed hesitation immediately. Fans rarely understand this psychological layer. Elite players build confidence not only from production but from centrality and importance. Once centrality fades, disorientation quietly forms. You begin questioning timing, pace, and relevance even though nothing appears technically broken. Broken systems can be fixed. Quiet displacement can only be accepted or adjusted to. Adjustment is challenging when identity is rooted in being the centerpiece. The offense at this camp never slowed to accommodate dominance. It sharpened to reward anticipation and punished delay instantly. For some, that sharpness felt liberating. For others, it felt suffocating because effort and emotion alone weren't enough. Basketball never asked for intensity. It asked for precision, and precision exposes readiness faster than any drill or statement ever could. Players accustomed to directing possessions suddenly realized they were responding rather than leading. Before they could fully settle into their preferred spots, the ball had already shifted elsewhere. That shift wasn't rooted in disrespect. It was rooted purely in efficiency. Efficiency changes everything, and that's when inner frustration quietly develops. No one expressed it loudly, but tension began forming beneath calm surfaces. Subtle alterations appeared in body language, and urgency turned into internal pressure. Players pressed harder, not to overpower anyone, but simply to regain a sense of importance. Pressing rarely helps because it introduces friction, and friction is precisely what Caitlin Clark's style erased. Her presence cleaned possessions so completely that certain methods became instantly outdated. No announcements explained that process. Coaches never held meetings or delivered lectures about new roles. Teammates never spoke openly about flow or hierarchy. Basketball just kept moving ahead, and systems that move ahead don't apologize. During closed scrimmages without cameras or crowds, the truth became undeniable. Caitlin operated the offense with composed authority while Paige Bueckers blended inside it seamlessly. The ball arrived exactly where it belonged and exactly when it was needed. That smoothness is brutal for those who stand outside it because smoothness doesn't require force or emotional assertion. Simply works naturally. Players whose impact relied on physical imposition felt the tempo leave them behind. Not as punishment, but as quiet structural consequence. The offense never paused to acknowledge effort or restore balance. It elevated rhythm instead. Fans rarely see that psychological layer. Displacement feels more personal than defeat, and adapting to displacement requires honest awareness. The camp never turned hostile or explosive because there was nothing to argue against. No blame existed to assign and no politics existed to protest. Basketball never took sides. It chose efficiency, and efficiency created a mental cliff for everyone present. Athletes faced only two paths: resist the new center of gravity or reshape impact around it. Hope remains fragile in rooms like that because each clean possession reinforces the same preference. By the end of camp, hierarchy wasn't declared by decree. It was confirmed through repetition. Repetition establishes fact, and once fact forms, the entire gym feels permanently transformed. Some players accepted the challenge and sharpened their roles. Others quietly sensed they might no longer belong as they once imagined. That awareness leads to difficult choices. Choices about identity and willingness rather than ability. When an elite environment grows clearer, staying becomes optional instead of automatic. Outsiders rush to attach dramatic labels when someone departs early. They call it conflict, ego, or controversy. Yet nothing at Team USA camp fit those stories. There were no shouting matches or slammed doors. No official statements clarified what unfolded. One player simply stepped away from participation and left, and the room froze in silence. That silence wasn't shock. It was understanding. This wasn't someone being forced out. It was a player realizing instantly that the environment had shifted in a way that no longer matched the version of basketball they depended on. That realization matters because leaving Team USA camp is never impulsive. It isn't emotional in the dramatic sense fans imagine. It is thoughtful, measured, and deeply calculated, even when painful. Elite athletes don't walk away because they can't compete. They leave because they clearly understand what competition now demands. By the closing days of camp, hierarchy was no longer abstract or theoretical. It couldn't be debated or reinterpreted optimistically. It became obvious in the way possessions unfolded. Caitlin Clark initiated. The ball moved quickly. The pace remained elevated. Paige Bueckers adjusted seamlessly. Other players discovered smaller yet valuable roles. But for one athlete, that clarity became impossible to ignore. Basketball no longer centered itself around their strengths. Not briefly, not situationally, but structurally. That was the moment the walkout stopped being only about performance and turned into something personal. Turned into identity. When identity is built on central importance, losing that importance feels like erasure, even if involvement technically remains. At this level, marginalization doesn't appear as sitting on a bench. It looks like standing on the floor while basketball quietly moves past you. That is far harder to accept. No one ever announced this athlete was finished. No coach delivered demotion. No teammate created exclusion. Basketball made its decisions silently, possession after possession confirming the same message. This system now works better through someone else. Once that message settles in, staying becomes optional rather than mandatory. Staying means reshaping identity into something unfamiliar or perhaps diminished. Not every player is prepared for that adjustment, especially where legacy and visibility carry weight. This was never about pride. It was about self-preservation. Walking away was not protest. It was honest acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that forcing relevance into a system that no longer reflects personal strengths can be more harmful than stepping aside. When this player departed, the gym never erupted with anger. Grew silent. Coaches exchanged quiet glances. Teammates avoided eye contact. No one chased after them because everyone understood what that moment represented. It was not personal. It was structural clarity revealed in real time. That's why this moment held such meaning. Not because someone left, but because of the reason they left. They were not escaping competition. They were responding to clarity. And clarity once reached doesn't disappear simply because it is uncomfortable. For those who remained inside the gym, the message was unmistakable. This environment is now defined by sharper thought, cleaner movement, and willingness to adapt to speed. There will be no slowing the game to preserve comfort. There will be no resetting systems to protect familiarity. Basketball has chosen its new focal point, and everyone else must decide how to exist around it. That decision is mentally heavier than any physical contest because it demands questions athletes usually avoid. Am I willing to redefine myself? Can I still impact the game without being central? Do I want to compete inside this new reality? Some athletes answered yes and grew stronger because of it. Others realized they required a different setting where their strengths again form the base rather than the complement. Neither response is wrong. But pretending the question doesn't exist becomes impossible once clarity fully forms. The walkout was never a rejection of Team USA. It was recognition of what Team USA had become in that instant. A place where basketball no longer waited. A place where relevance had to be earned, possession by possession. A place where efficiency outweighed familiarity. Once that line is crossed, staying or leaving becomes less about loyalty and more about honesty. At the highest level of basketball, a truth exists so unforgiving that many players spend entire careers avoiding it. The game does not care who you are. It doesn't care about reputation, past success, or how hard you work to reach this stage. Basketball only cares about what works in the present moment. And when it discovers something that works better, it moves toward it without hesitation. That was the reality revealed at Team USA camp. Not loudly, not dramatically, but relentlessly. Once Caitlin Clark became the center of gravity, everything else followed naturally. The ball found her because it made sense. The pace followed her because possessions flowed more efficiently when she dictated them. No coach needed to enforce it. No teammate had to approve it. It happened because basketball is a self-correcting system, and self-correcting systems don't negotiate. This is where adapt or exit stops being motivational and becomes literal. Adaptation at this level isn't cosmetic. It's not about working harder or wanting it more. It's about recalibrating how you impact the game when conditions change. Some players can do that. They recognize shifts in the system and immediately find new ways to add value. They become connectors instead of focal points, influencing without dominating and letting efficiency define their contributions. Those players survive clarity. Others struggle, not because of a lack of talent, but because their identity is too tightly bound to being central. When the game no longer flows through them, they lose orientation. And basketball offers no comfort in that confusion. Doesn't slow down. Doesn't pause to allow recalibration. Simply keeps moving. That's what makes this truth so cold. There's no time to mourn the version of yourself that once mattered more. You either adapt to what the game now demands or recognize that this environment no longer aligns with who you are. Neither outcome is moral. Neither is personal. But both are final. At Team USA camp, that reality played out in its purest form. No politics clouded decisions. No media narratives influenced outcomes. No fan pressure intervened. Just basketball. And basketball made it clear. Decision-making speed, precision, and control are now the currency of relevance. Volume didn't matter. Physicality didn't matter. Visibility didn't matter. What mattered was seeing the play before it fully formed and executing it cleanly. Caitlin Clark didn't impose that standard. She embodied it. And once embodied, it became the measure for everyone else, whether they wanted it or not. That's why this moment matters beyond one camp. It isn't just about Caitlin. It's about what modern basketball is becoming. The game is accelerating. Reads are sharper. Margins are shrinking. Systems now favor players who reduce friction rather than create force. And elite environments like Team USA Camp make that evolution impossible to ignore. Some players will thrive. Some will redefine themselves within it. Some will seek settings that reward different strengths. But the direction is set. Basketball isn't asking for louder voices. It's demanding cleaner execution. And cleanliness leaves no room for nostalgia. Doesn't care how things used to work. Basketball doesn't care what roles existed yesterday. It only cares about what produces the best result in the present moment. That's why tension at Team USA Camp never erupted into conflict. There was nothing to fight over. The game had already made its decision. And that decision forced every player in the gym to confront the same question. Not am I good enough? But am I willing to become what this version of the game requires? That question is far more difficult because it demands releasing control, surrendering the belief that relevance is guaranteed, and accepting that identity in basketball is always conditional. Conditional on fit, timing, and efficiency. Caitlin Clark didn't just succeed in that environment. She clarified it. She demonstrated what basketball rewards now and, by extension, what it will reward going forward. And that clarity rippled outward. Paige Bueckers adapted and elevated. Others adjusted quietly. One player recognized that this wasn't a place to renegotiate identity and chose to leave. None of those responses were wrong. They were honest. And honesty is precisely what elite basketball demands when clarity arrives. That is the cold truth. Not everyone loses because they were beaten. Some lose because the game evolves past the version of themselves they are unwilling or unprepared to release. What unfolded at Team USA Camp wasn't drama. It was basketball functioning at its highest level, selecting efficiency, discarding comfort, forcing adaptation. And once that process begins, there is no appeal. There is only choice. Adapt or exit. This moment didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't a one-week anomaly, a temporary power shift, or the result of one closed-door scrimmage. The camp didn't create the problem. It revealed it. Long before Caitlin Clark entered that gym, women's basketball was already approaching a breaking point, one in which pace, processing, and efficiency would outweigh tradition, hierarchy, or comfort. Team USA Camp was simply the first place where there was nowhere to hide from that reality. To understand why this moment hit so profoundly, you have to rewind, not to Caitlin's highlights or records, but to the way women's basketball was quietly structured for decades and why that structure wasn't built to handle what she represents. For generations, the game evolved under a specific philosophy. Control possessions, value structure, minimize risk. This wasn't a flaw, it was survival. Women's basketball had to fight for legitimacy within systems that constantly questioned its value. Coaches emphasized discipline. Players were taught to protect possessions rather than stretch limits. Creativity existed, but only within boundaries. That philosophy shaped everything. Who was trusted early, who ran offenses, who could take risks without consequence. The system rewarded those who fit it rather than those who bent it. And that worked until it didn't. As skill levels rose, as shooting range expanded, and as players grew up watching faster, freer basketball, pressure began building quietly beneath the surface. The game was getting quicker. The systems weren't. That gap created tension. And tension looks fine until someone exposes it. Caitlin Clark isn't just a great shooter. She is a stress test. She forces systems to reveal whether they are built for modern basketball or merely designed to preserve old rhythms. Her range is dangerous not simply because it produces points, but because it accelerates decision-making. Defenders must commit earlier. Help must rotate faster. Offenses must process information at a higher speed. That is uncomfortable for systems built on control, because control relies on predictability. Caitlin doesn't break the game recklessly or emotionally. She logically accelerates clarity. And once clarity accelerates, anything designed to slow it down begins to crack. That's why Caitlin Clark's presence feels destabilizing. Even when she operates entirely within the system hints at boundaries she doesn't recognize. And the game favors her anyway. Team USA camp is meant to be the most controlled environment in women's basketball. The best players, the best coaching, and the clearest hierarchy. If modern basketball couldn't be contained there, it couldn't be contained anywhere. That's why the tension felt so sharp. This wasn't a young player disrupting a college team. This was the future walking into the most elite room possible and quietly reorganizing it. Not through rebellion, but through efficiency. That threatens systems built on stability because it signals the change isn't optional. It's already happening. At the highest level, everyone is talented. That's what fans often forget. By the time athletes reach environments like Team USA camp, skill gaps are razor thin. Everyone can score. Everyone can defend. Everyone has survived elite competition. So when some players rise while others struggle, it's not because one group suddenly became better. It's because one group is built for instability and the other for control. That distinction determines everything. Influence in basketball comes in two forms: dominance or dependence. Dominant players impose themselves on the game. They seize possessions and bend defenses through force, physicality, or volume. The game responds because it must. Dependent players rely on rhythm, timing that suits their strengths, and systems that provide repeated opportunities in familiar spaces. Both can succeed until the environment shifts. When pace increases and decisions must happen faster, dominance adapts. Dependence struggles because it assumes the game will wait. Caitlin doesn't wait. She reads the floor faster than the game wants to move and then moves it there anyway. That's why her presence exposes dependence so quickly. Not by attacking it, but by outpacing it. Once pace becomes the true separator, players confront an uncomfortable truth about their own games. Not whether they're skilled, but whether they're autonomous. Modern basketball is no longer decided by athleticism alone. It's determined by processing speed. Who sees the second pass before the first arrives? Who recognizes defensive shifts before they form fully? Who understands where pressure is coming from and where it's about to leave? Caitlin Clark's greatest advantage isn't her shooting range. It's that she operates one decision ahead of the environment. That advantage compounds quickly. Defenders feel late even when they're not. Teammates feel rushed even when they're not. Systems feel strained even when functioning perfectly, because the game is being asked to move faster than it's accustomed to. Players who thrive in that reality don't panic. They simplify. They reduce their game to essentials. They cut decisively, space cleanly, and embrace roles that aren't central but remain meaningful. Players who struggle do the opposite. They try to reclaim control, slow possessions, force contact, and pull the game back to a rhythm they understand. But the game doesn't rewind. That's when frustration begins. One of the most dangerous aspects of systemic change is how personal it feels. When the game stops flowing through you, it doesn't feel like structural adjustment, it feels like rejection. And that's when internalized questions emerge, even though the game isn't asking them. Why am I not touching the ball? Why does it feel like I'm being bypassed? Why does the offense move without me? The truth is rarely cruel. The game isn't judging you, it's optimizing. But optimization offers no reassurance. Elite players often equate centrality with value, so optimization can feel like a threat. That's why reactions diverge so sharply. Some lean in, some withdraw, some search for explanations that don't exist. A few recognize something deeper. This environment is no longer structured around who they are in the moment. Every major evolution in basketball produces a new archetype. Players who don't need control to influence, who don't need volume to matter, who don't need the game to slow down to succeed. These players thrive in instability. They don't require guarantees. They don't rely on hierarchy for security. They don't need the ball to prove relevance. Caitlin Clark belongs to that archetype. So does Paige Bueckers. So will the next generation watching this unfold. That's the quiet consequence of moments like Team USA Camp. They don't just sort current players, they preview the future. And that future rewards clarity, not comfort. Systems rarely panic when talent appears. They panic when talent cannot be managed. Caitlin Clark doesn't threaten basketball because she scores too much. She threatens it because she accelerates the game in ways systems weren't designed to absorb. When systems can't absorb change, they regulate. Not loudly, not aggressively, but subtly. Stress systems almost never respond with open resistance. They respond with language. And language isn't sustainable. It won't hold internationally. Over time, she'll have to adjust. Those phrases sound reasonable, analytical, responsible, but they're defensive. They're not about improvement. They're about delay. Systems delay to buy time without admitting they're behind. Caitlin has triggered this response everywhere she's played. Not because she breaks rules, but because she exposes how narrow the rules really are. Her range forces earlier decisions. Her passing punishes hesitation. Her pace confirms the game can move faster without becoming reckless. That terrifies systems built on control, because control depends on predictability. Caitlin makes predictability expensive. Whenever someone threatens a system, the phrase "adjust" emerges. She'll need to adjust, her game will have to adjust, she can't keep playing like this. But notice what adjustment usually means. Rarely does it mean the system adapts. It usually means the player conforms. Slow down, shoot closer, fit the rhythm. Caitlin has heard these messages her entire career, and she has consistently responded by proving that the system can adapt instead. At Team USA Camp, there was no time for theoretical debate, no opportunity to massage narratives or prepare talking points. The game moved too fast. Once the game demonstrates a better way, adjustment stops being optional. It becomes survival. History makes this clear. Systems always lose to evolution. Not immediately, not gracefully, but inevitably. Basketball has endured this before. Three-point shooting was once deemed irresponsible. Positionless basketball was once considered chaotic. Spacing-heavy offenses were once seen as soft. Each time systems resisted. Each time the game moved forward anyway. Caitlin Clark isn't the first player to force a system to adapt. She's just doing it faster. And in an era where evidence arrives instantly, efficiency can no longer be hidden. Impact can no longer be downplayed. You can't pretend something doesn't work when it clearly does. That's why Team USA Camp felt like a breaking point. There was nowhere to hide behind structure. The structure was being tested in real time, and it bent. It's tempting to frame this as a Caitlin Clark story. It isn't. She's a catalyst. What she represents is the next phase of women's basketball. A game that values speed of thought over control, clarity over comfort, and decision-making over dominance. That shift is already underway at youth levels, in college, and internationally. Team USA Camp wasn't the beginning. It was confirmation. And confirmation is dangerous for systems that rely on denial. Moments like this don't vanish when camp ends. They don't stay contained in one gym. They aren't erased by press releases. They don't quietly reset when players return to their teams. They ripple outward. What happened at Team USA Camp wasn't dramatic enough to dominate headlines, but it was definitive enough to change how decisions will be made going forward. Once clarity appears at the highest level, it reshapes everything beneath it. From this point forward, coaches can't unsee what worked. They can't forget how possessions moved when pace was accelerated. They can't ignore how clean possessions felt when decisions arrived early. They can't pretend comfort matters more than efficiency. That doesn't mean Caitlin Clark will dominate every system. It means every system will now be measured against what she revealed. Who speeds the game up instead of slowing it down, who reduces friction instead of creating it, who can function without being central yet still elevate the whole. Those questions will quietly influence roster construction. Players who adapt quickly will rise. Players who cling to centrality will struggle. Players who understand how to impact without control will become invaluable. This is how eras shift. Not with announcements but with preference. Coaches don't change philosophies overnight. They adjust incrementally. Moments like this accelerate that adjustment. More trust in early reads, more emphasis on spacing and timing, less tolerance for possessions that stall. The game Caitlin Clark represents doesn't eliminate structure. It demands smarter structure. Structure that can handle speed. Structure that doesn't panic under pressure. Structure that empowers decision-makers instead of restraining them. That's the future of women's basketball. Team USA camp was the preview. Years from now, people will ask when the shift became unavoidable. It won't be one highlight. It won't be one record. It won't be one quote. It will be this kind of moment. A closed gym, no cameras, no crowd, just the game choosing what it wanted to become, and everyone else having to respond. That's how real change happens. Quietly first, publicly later. In the end, what happened at Team USA camp wasn't about Caitlin Clark embarrassing anyone. It wasn't about someone storming out. It wasn't about ego. It was about basketball operating at its highest level. It told the truth. The truth about pace, the truth about readiness, the truth about who adapts and who doesn't. Caitlin Clark didn't demand that truth. She revealed it. And once revealed, it couldn't be ignored. The game moved forward. Everyone else had to decide whether to move with it. If you enjoy deep breakdowns like this, the real stories behind closed doors, the moments that don't make headlines but change everything, make sure you're subscribed. The most important shifts in basketball don't happen when the lights are on. They happen when the game tells the truth. And players have to decide how to respond. Subscribe now. There's a lot more coming.